Howdy everyone. Good morning. Welcome to another trip. Today we're going to be visiting Herodium, which is behind me. Herodium was built by the Herod the Great as a memorial and a monument to himself. He built this here because of two events that happened early in his career, not far from here, actually about 3 miles and maybe 4 or 5 kilometers. These two events are one, that he has a final fight against his brother and the high priest of Jerusalem, Faisal and Antigonus, which they essentially had sided with the Parthenons, and Herod had decided that the future was with the Romans, and he was right. The Romans took over. The other event that happens at the same time is that his mother almost dies. And these two events, they have a serious effect on Herod, which causes him to choose to build the center of his kingdom here at Herodium, 10 kilometers from Jerusalem, which is in that direction. He builds here a fantastic palace and a fantastic stronghold. Herod builds it as a memorial to himself. It is completely and totally man-made. Anyways, we'll climb up to the top and visit it. Come, let's go. Okay, a little bit of a climb. I always think about the poor people 2,000 years ago who had to climb up here in the heat, and there's no cold water or air conditioning here. I have no doubt that King Herod had some poor unlucky slaves to carry him up this little hill here. Actually, the main entrance to the palace, that was not the main entrance to the palace. That was a modern walkway built for tourists, I guess. We will see the rebuilding, or where the original entrance to the palace was. Anyways, from up here we can see the grandeur of the place. There was according to reports, according to Josephus, we can actually see here a model which shows it. There were 4 towers, one large one where they are now building a viewpoint from. Hopefully the next time we come here we'll be able to climb up to the viewpoint. And there were 4 other towers, and on the inside was where Herod's palaces was, all filled with quite amazing stuff, including an absolutely beautiful bathhouse. Let's go down and see it. This is the main entrance to the palace. At the end of the trip, we'll see the main stairs leading up to it. But now let's go to the bathhouse. Over here in the front of us, we have the remains of a Roman bathhouse, including one of the most beautifully well-preserved Roman domes. Absolutely beautiful. This would have been a typical Roman bathhouse. It would have had a cold room, a hot room, and a tepid room. Also, on the other side of this complex, we have one of the oldest synagogues. Synagogue that is certainly more than likely 2,000 years old. This is very possibly one of the oldest synagogues in remains here in the land of Israel. It is very similar to a number of other synagogues we have found here, including Gamla and Magdala in the north of the country, and my mind goes blank exactly where the other synagogues are. This is a very typical synagogue from the 1st century. You can see it's built in the shape of a square or rectangle. It's actually being used for what it was meant for. You can see these young gentlemen praying. There's a little bit of a disagreement amongst archaeologists exactly who may have built it. Some think it may have been built by King Herod, which would certainly put it to be one of, if not the oldest synagogue. Others believe that it was probably very possibly built later. But anyways, I think this is quite fascinating. Possibly one of the oldest, 4 or 5 oldest synagogues, the remains of a synagogue here in the land of Israel. But we're now going to move forward in time, about 130 years after the death of King Herod. We're going to go down into some tunnels. Let's go. Oh. Okay, what's happening here? What are we in? What are these cisterns? What are these tunnels? These cisterns were originally built by King Herod as a water source, as a place to store his water. Of course, we're in the middle of the desert, and he does need water. And then later on, 130 years after, 134 years to be exact, after the death of King Herod, this place is taken over by Bar Kokhba in the second rebellion against the Romans. He uses this as a secondary base when he is fighting against the Romans. Of course, he loses the rebellion, and as a result of this, Jerusalem is destroyed, and the Jews are expelled from the land of Israel. Anyway, we're now going to go on and see, no pun intended, the jewel in King Herod's crown. Quite the fantastic place. Anyways, let's go on. We have now come to what may be the most fantastic part of what they found here at Herodium, this theater. This is a very small theater. There's space here for about 450, maybe 500 people, not particularly big. And up at the top, under the cover, we have Herod's private viewing room just for Herod and his best friends. Anyways, let's go back up and we'll take a quick peek at that and then finish off with one final thing. Let's go. As I said, this is very possibly the crown, the jewel in King Herod's crown, this private viewing room for the theater behind me. We have here the remnants of beautiful frescoes. You can see them up on the top. Apparently they believe that these frescoes were very more than likely made by fresco artists who came here specifically from Rome. And even more importantly than that, the theory is that King Herod builds this room specifically for Mark Antony. Mark Antony comes here and visits him. Quite fantastic. Over here to my right, we have the final two things which are quite amazing. We have the remnants and the reconstruction of quite a fantastic staircase leading up from the lower city all the way up to the palace. Josephus writes that there's 200 steps. We'll believe him. I'm not going to count the steps as we go up. You're welcome to come here and do that yourself. So anyways, let's go up. Okay, we've arrived at our final spot. This is King Herod's tomb. Not much to see. In a moment I'll take you to a reconstruction of it. Herod not only builds Herodium as a palace, he has several palaces, truth be told. He not only builds it to consolidate his power here in the desert, 10 kilometers from Jerusalem over there, but he also builds this place to be a monument to him. He plans his burial site years before his death. We now know that after his death, at some point in time, we're not really sure of the time frame, that his monument, that his tomb is destroyed. His subjects so hated him that they came here to Herodium after his death, and they destroyed the monument to him. Anyways, up here, we'll quickly go and see a reconstruction of what his tomb may have looked like. This is a reconstruction of what we think Herod's tomb might have looked like. It's quite wonderful, quite fantastic, certainly a monument fit for a king, even a king like King Herod. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tour. If you did, please like it, and also feel free to subscribe. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get a hold of me. Thanks for joining me.